Up, y'all? Dunks back here with a YouTube video. Another YouTube great video for y'all today. I want y'all to imagine, like, before we get into this video, right? I want you to imagine, like, what a football team, a team of football players would look like, but if they had superpowers. So, I hope you get that good thought in your mind, like maybe what that might look like to you. And we're going to use that as our basis for today's video. Since today we are going to be talking about my concept for a new mode in the college football line of video games, specifically the college football 26 and beyond. It's like a fantasy challenge mode. It's kind of the gameplay you're going to be seeing in the background. If you've played Madden 08 through 12 on the PlayStation 2 generation games, then you've seen this mode. But the fantasy challenge mode was this game mode where you go through and you play in four separate leagues of teams. You play against four separate leagues of teams, and you play against different teams that kind of, I wouldn't say match that skill level, but match the skill level of each league. And you take on a league champion. And after you take on that league's champion, you beat them, unlock them, and you move on to the next league, so on and so forth, until you get to the fourth and final league, where you play against all kind of like gauntlet teams, and you play against a whole host of random different crazy squads that you're going to be seeing against. They're all really like crazy overpowered, all like 99 overalls. So today I'm kind of just going to talk about like my concept for that type of game mode in newer Madden, or what that would look like if EA were to bring it back. Before we do get started into the video though, after the explanation of the mode, I would like to shout out Caleb Swint on X, Twitter, whatever you like to call it. He helped me put up some ideas for the video. I'll probably put his link in the description, so go follow. With that being said, we'll get into it. So with the fantasy challenge mode, you always played against a set group of teams. Like, I want to talk about like the overpowered teams in the game mode, which are the teams you'll see me use in the background. Our first team we're talking about is the Monsters. They were the team you got for beating the Newbie League. The Newbie League, really simple team, real simple concept. They didn't do too much. Really, wasn't a whole lot. You kind of, like, the structure of the leagues were real simple. You played like a 3 to 5 game schedule. You played in a playoff, and then you got to the playoff tournament, and then you got through to the championship boss team. And so the first team we're talking about was the Newbie League team. I thought it was the Monsters. The Kickers. Had checked my notes. The Kickers, well, I mean, there's no need to really explain what they did. They kicked. Essentially, as you're probably going to see in the background, as you see in the gameplay, they can just kick the ball really far. Like, you can be from your own end zone, and they will kick a field goal, and it'll go in. Like, their team gets an insane boost to kicking for no reason. And if you tackle them too hard, you get the roughing the kicker penalty. So that kind of makes them overpowered, because you kind of, if you're not careful, you can rush the kicker on accident, which is really weird and not really the most fun thing to do. But the Kickers, they weren't too special. They were 98 overall. Their jerseys were kind of modeled to be like players of like the 1940s and 50s. As you see in the background, just drilled the kick from 119 yards. So you see, like, they were a very good team. Their stadium wasn't too much, but they hit like a lot of their kicks. The next team I'll talk about, the Monsters. They're the next kind of team in line here. They were the Black and Blue League champions. You kind of had they weren't too bad of a team. They didn't do a whole lot. The best way I could kind of describe this Monster squad is it's kind of hard, but they could they had an effect where your players, if you were passing the ball, the passing icons would scramble. So if you've been playing college football 25, when you're playing on the road, or if you're using a young quarterback and the stadium pulse is really high, sometimes you may not be able to see a receiver's passing icon. That's basically their whole gimmick. And they were 90 overall, 99. Their jerseys weren't anything super special. The Powerhouse League champion was the what's it called team? Manipulators. They were the Powerhouse champion. They really didn't do a whole lot, but they were able to like manipulate your plays on offense and like change your plays. Their jerseys were really cool, as they had like the spiral jersey. They were also 99 overall squad, as most teams who were in this little like most of the boss teams were. And so for those first 3 leagues, all you did was play in your regular season tournament, and you play a champion. But in between each of those regular season games, you would have challenges where you can accept or decline them for roster points, and you can kind of like gamble your players away. Where if you win the challenge, you gain skill points and you get to keep your player. But if you lose your player and you get a worse replacement, and you like lose some skill points. I'm sorry, no. Yeah, you lose skill points if you lose the thing, and you get a player that's worse than the guy you had, a worse replacement player. So that's kind of, I like the trade-off, but it's not the most interesting aspect of the mode. But the manipulators, again, they didn't really do too much. However, they weren't like the worst team in the world. You could still use them and be really competitive. And that's the thing with these teams, that after you unlock them, you not only unlock their stadiums, but you were able to use them in Play Now. Not franchise, but you could use them in Play Now. Now, I'm going to talk about the final boss of the Fantasy Challenge mode. We have the Fever, as some could say, Fever Dream teams. I'm kind of going to compare these teams to I'm going to say odd comparison, but they're kind of like Marvel's Fantastic Four. You have Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, you got the Thing, and you got the Human Torch. That's kind of how I'm going to like describe these teams. So there's 4 teams that you have to play. And I'm specifically talking about the Madden 10 version of the mode. In Madden 08, the kickers and the manipulators aren't in the game. No, I know the kickers aren't in the game. Like a few teams that are in the Madden 10 version aren't in the Madden 08 version, the original version of the mode. I'm specifically just talking about the Madden 10 version of the mode. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier on in the video. But we have our kind of like our Fantastic Four. The first team I'm kind of going to compare to Mr. Fantastic. They're the most known. I mean, I know this game mode is kind of forgotten, but they're the most known. They're kind of like the face of the group, and that's going to be the dummies. You're not seeing their gameplay right now. You're seeing the deceivers, not the deceivers. They're later. You're seeing the manipulators. You will see the dummies gameplay later. But the dummies, if you've played like PS2 Madden games, you know you have the training, especially like the later ones. You know you have the skill drills. So the dummies come from the skill drills, and essentially they're kind of just like out to get you, because in the skill drills are meant for the players to get better at the game. And so EA's kind of lore behind this team was they're coming to get revenge on you for beating them in all the skill drills over the years. So they're the first team. They're kind of like Mr. Fantastic, plain Jane. You know them, you love them, but they still have some really interesting abilities. Like Reed Richards, he's really smart. He's real flexible. The dummies, well, they're not smart. They are taller than the average like human NFL player, which is what you're using when playing against them. So your DBs may struggle in coverage. Not only that, but there's the dummies gameplay right there on the screen. But they also spam hurry up. So I was using them in this gameplay. I was not the Raiders. I was using them. But they spam hurry up constantly. So you pretty much, and since every team in the Supreme League, this is our like Fantastic Four League. They're called the Supreme League. So every team there is 99 overall. They got 99 speed, and if you don't put a spot on the quarterback, so just so you can kind of get a feel for like how they play, I'll kind of like walk you through. You see their jerseys; they're just like a typical, like kind of like a practice jersey uniform. Their stadium, very very nice, kind of basic. I like that they decided to put them in like a warehouse, and there's all these like dummies from the warehouse that are watching the game. I think that's a really neat and cool concept. But like, I'm gonna kind of walk you through my gameplay. Again, I am using the dummies, so which is why they probably will not be the most accurate to how their team plays if you were to play against them, which is on me. I kind of just felt like it would be cool if I used them. But you see, like, no quarterback spy. I kind of just get out the pocket and I kind of roll out, get it to my receiver. And you see how he's taller than, like, so much taller than everyone else. Now, it's not that much taller of a difference, but it's a difference. It's a difference enough where if you throw it up, I mean, your defensive back isn't catching it, or if you're throwing it up on offense, your receiver, you know, there's a chance, but very slim. The dummies, again, like you see that, and you can't kick. You cannot kick with the dummies. That's another thing I forgot to mention. They will not kick the ball. They only go for 2. So you see I line up with the field goal fake there. But the only time they kick is on kickoffs. It's the only time they're allowed to kick in game. So again, I'm kind of just walking you through this. So when I get to the college football 25 portion or I guess 26 portion of the video on how I would like to see this mode implemented, you have an understanding of some of the team gimmicks. So if I explain them in the gameplay, won't show it, you have an idea. So you have an idea of what that may look like. The next team we're going to talk about is like the Thing. The Thing, very strong, muscular, buff, real big and real tall. And that is the Tridents. The Tridents are this team. They're from Atlantis. They're really tall as a Trident. They're actually like taller than the dummies. And when we get to that gameplay, you'll see like the height comparison is really crazy. They're kind of like the dummies, but they don't spam hurry up offense. Like they play football regularly. They're just really tall, so you kind of have to get lucky if they decide to throw the ball up. And if you decide to throw the ball, like, you got to be smart about your decision making. You got to take your underneath routes. And if you do want to launch it up, I mean, I guess hope your receiver has like 99 speed, or they have like a blown coverage, because most of the time there's a chance. Most of the time it's probably going to be picked off because they're just so tall. The Tridents, their uniforms look really nice, and so does their stadium. Their stadium is like, it's in sand, and it's kind of carved out of like coral, and just kind of, it's like a beached vibe, which is really cool. So it's like underground, so it's as if it was like underwater, but like Atlantis kind of like came out of the ground, like the water kind of just like dried up from the sea part of where Atlantis was, or like Atlantis before it like sank. That's kind of how it would look. Excuse me, or that's like how they imagined it and put it in game. Again, their jerseys, excuse me again, it's like real basic, nothing super duper like over the top, but real, simple, not doing the most. And I like the player names, and we'll get to this a little bit later on in the video, but the player names for this team are hilarious. Like, and all the player names, besides the dummies, all their player names are like references to something that has to do with the team. So like the Tridents, they have like names of things like underwater, like Coral Reef is their quarterback, like Coral Reef, but instead of Coral Reef, his name's Carl Reef. Like, just something really interesting that I think they did for the mode. Then the third team we'll talk about is the Glaciers, and their comparison in the Fantastic Four is the Invisible Woman. Again, you also see that during their gameplay, their segment of gameplay, but the Glaciers are a translucent team they play in. If you've ever played the Madden, like newer Maddens, Ultimate Team mode, even Madden Mobile from like 2016, if you've seen like the Zero Freeze, like the wintertime stadium you play in, that's their stadium you play in, if you remember that. Yeah, as you see them on the screen right now, the Glaciers. Their jerseys are hollow. They do have like their logo on their jerseys. You can kind of see, and just like watch it. Just watch the kick return. Just watch the kick return, because this is genuinely insane to me how they coded a player to just go invisible. Just goes invisible on the kick return, and you're gonna be able to follow him in my gameplay, because you can see he has the spotlight under him, like the player spotlight. But if you're playing against him, that you wouldn't be able to tell. I mean, like, the camera follows him, but you're not really knowing, what's going on with that. So that is something really interesting about their team, that they can go invisible. That's it. They're like average sized players. Everything about them is average, but they can go invisible. I probably say the best way to like defeat them is kind of like, if you're on offense and you're running the ball, there will be times where like a hole will open up, and because their players can go invisible, you may not know if that hole is open and available for you to run through it, or if there's an invisible defensive lineman waiting to put you on the ground. So like, you kind of have to take those, not really a whole point in playing zone coverage, because like, really, I mean, like, not playing man, you kind of just have to see what works on defense, and like, maybe trying to get an onside kick, just because or make sure your kicker is good enough where you can kick the ball out the end zone every time. But besides that, the Glaciers not the best team to try to run or like throw the ball on. And then our final team in the mode, our final Fantastic Four comparison, goes to the Deceivers. The Deceivers, the team I keep mixing up with the Manipulators, they are like the Human Torch. And I say this because the Human Torch, well, he's hot. He goes flame on. The Deceivers are like, they're supposed to be like devil-like creatures. That's like their whole thing. And due to this, they play in, I guess, like the developers' version of what would be a like hell-like place. And because of that, it's insane. They get 5 downs. It is insane. It takes you 5 downs to even stop them. They not only get 4 downs, but they get an additional 5th down. They can influence penalties that the refs call. And I'd probably say, like, the most outrageous form of cheating would probably be the end zones. Not the end zones, the goalpost. When you kick the football and you're the away team, you're not the Deceivers. Your goalposts, it's like, if I were to take a ruler, it'd be like, I don't know, maybe like 4 centimeters of width. That's the width of like the goalpost, of the space in between the goalposts. When they kick it, it's about, I don't know, it's much larger than your actual goalpost. I'd say the width would be like, it's like, if it's in the middle, it kind of stretches to like, the ends of each goalpost stretches to like the thirds of the end zones on each side. That's like the best way I can describe it. It's really, really long. You're seeing the what's called the Trident's gameplay on the screen right now. But the Deceivers, it's insane. It is so very insane to me. It's so insane that they put a team like this in the game. Again, you see the height difference I was talking about right there. But that's all the original mode was. It wasn't too much. Again, as I stated, after you beat each team, you were able to unlock them, and that was really cool. Each team was inspired by like a gimmick that EA had in the games at the time known as Madden cards. So I think that when it comes to me, how this pertains to College Football 26, well, my idea, bring the game back. But now that you like know what the game mode was, about a little bit about the game mode, some background, the teams, everything, how might EA bring this back? So before we get into the teams and everything, I think I kind of want to just get into things like league structure, pretty basic, the basics of the mode, rewards, and then after that I'll get into the presentation of the mode. I have some little like mock-ups and concept art I did, And then we'll get into their teams, some of their rosters, things like that. Logos, gimmicks, simple things like that. So basically like league structure, there would be 7 leagues. You have 6 regular leagues, and the 7th league would be like would kind of be like the Supreme League of the old games. It would be like the gauntlet that you run through. So the first 3 leagues would be called the JV Conference, the Underdog Conference, and the Red and Blue Conference. So these 3 leagues all work the same. You play a 5-game schedule. Very simple. You play against like group of 5 opponents. Very, teams that match each. So like the JV Conference, you'd be playing against like some of the very much so more recent schools who made the jump to FBS. So like, like your Delaware, Missouri State, since they're moving up next year. You have your Kennesaw States, your Sam Houston States, and even just some like historically bad group of 5 programs. You see our deceivers there, right there. The Underdog Conference, they have teams who are like really underrated group of 5 programs. So like your Marshalls programs I wouldn't necessarily put Boise State in there just because I have them somewhere else. But you play very underrated group of 5 schools, not necessarily schools who are, and let's say schools who are like on the come up, not necessarily schools who are like super established group of 5 powers, but schools who are like on the rise or who are really good currently, who maybe haven't been good their whole time as a Division 1A program or like as like an FBS program. Then the Red and Blue League, you play schools who have the colors of red and blue. I mean, I can't really get into it. Again, in each of the first 3 leagues, you play a schedule of 5 games, a 5-game schedule, and then you go through a mini playoff. And if you win every game in the mini playoff, you would face the eventual league champion, who we'll get to later, not currently. Then we have our next 3 leagues. Never mind, let's have 6 leagues. Not 7, sorry. 6 leagues. So then the next 2 leagues, the Gem Conference would be the next conference you play in. And these would feature teams who are your Boise States, your teams, it makes a group of 5 and like kind of lower end Power 5, or I guess Power 4 now, Power 4 schools. You play your Boise States, like schools who are they're gems. I mean, like, I don't really know how to put it. They're overall great programs who don't really get a whole lot of recognition. So like a good example besides Boise State, in my opinion, would be a school like West Virginia, where they have a lot of like program history. They've won a lot of games, but they haven't won a national championship. They aren't consistently at the top. Our second to last conference before we get to our big super conference with all our overpowered schools / teams is the Gamer Conference. I'm calling this one, and this one is kind of just like a way for EA to incorporate more YouTuber teams into the game. If you've played Dynasty mode in College Football 25, you know that the generic FCS teams, they're based off of like older YouTuber dynasty teams that YouTubers have made. So in this conference, you'd kind of just play against like different teams that YouTubers created. And again, still a 5-game schedule in both these leagues, but you play in the Gamer Conference. I'd say you go 4 games against team builder teams made from YouTubers, and then maybe like a team of like EA developers or something like that. And again, you still have for both of these leagues your playoff to beat the champion. Now you have the final league in our kind of structuring list. You'd have the Royalty League. This is where you play all of the overpowered teams, where you play all the teams we'll get to later of how overpoweredly broken they are. You kind of just see them, they're overpowered. The best team, the best. before I get to unlockables and rewards, this game mode would be kind of like Dynasty mode, where you can do it online, but you could also do it offline. This way, EA can add some monetization area to the game if they wanted to. So let's say EA really wanted to find a way to put some monetization into the mode, they could, and they do this by offline version and online version. So in both versions, the concept is still the same. You play the leagues, through the leagues, you get everything. But the online version has, and this, I guess, where we get to our reward system. But the online version would have a tiered reward system, so kind of like a battle pass. The best way I can describe this battle pass would be like the NBA 2K season pass that they do, or like the Madden season pass with Ultimate Team, or with that like season pass. So it's not too strenuous on you as a consumer. You don't have to pay for it. You can pay to get more rewards, but it would be like a battle pass thing, and you kind of get like Ultimate Team rewards. You get different Ultimate Team packs, jersey packs based off of the teams you beat and things like that. They're just something simple. And then the offline version, the rewards would be really simple. Just like, when you beat a team, you unlock it. But I also created some rewards for beating different leagues. So like after you beat the Underdog League, you'd gain the ability to add up to 3 of your Road to Glory players onto your Fantasy Challenge team. I'd also like to point out that to do this, for this mode, you would be able to pick a team builder team and a real life NCAA team. Kind of like in the older game, you chose a real NFL team and you took them to victory. In this game mode, in this version of the mode, you would be able to use a team builder team or a real college team. So if you really want to use Ohio State and kind of just fly through the mode and not really have a challenge until, maybe the last league, you could do that. If you wanted to have a challenge maybe the full way through and use a school like Delaware or Missouri State, you could do that. And mind you, the team you choose will also affect some of the way the teams get chosen. Because if you're let's say if you choose to be, say you choose to be Boise State, well, by the time you play the Gem Conference teams, you wouldn't play against Boise State. It wouldn't make sense. So the team you choose would affect the opponents you get, but not too much. But back to the rewards, as stated, after you beat the Underdog League, you would be able to add up to 3 Road to Glory players to your team. You'll also be able to get 2 from the 2 boss teams you've beaten up to that point. You'd be able to gain their 2 best players at your weakest position. I think that would be a really interesting reward. After beating the Gem Conference, you'd unlock your choice of one of the Fantasy Challenge teams from the older version of the mode. And you'd also gain 2 extra mental and physical abilities for your Road to Glory player. After the Red and Blue League, you'd get 10 skill points and a special pop-up screen to talk about your progress thus far, and a small video detailing the road ahead. The Creator Conference, which is what I'm calling the team with the YouTuber teams. You get 2 extra protection slots, so you can protect 2 more players as you start off with 3 slots. And then lastly, after beating the entire mode, you'd be able to, on top of unlocking, all the teams you've just beaten, you'd also be able to unlock 2 fantasy teams from the older games and 10 Road to Glory skill points. Here would be a base picture of kind of the base screen showing all the teams, conferences, and your progress. This particular screen shows if I was using a team builder team, particularly my custom team, the South Dakota Tech Wolfpack from the Dynasty series. Long live the Wolfpack. Won't be doing them as a series anymore. But that aside, this kind of, again, just shows your progress. It would cycle through different pictures from when you've played. Again, not doing too much. This is kind of just like a game screen, like a regular season screen. You have the conference logo, a silhouette of your team's mascot, and kind of just 2 players of your team from the teams that are going to be playing. Again, this is kind of a real simple screen, not meant to do a whole lot. Kind of just like a play now screen. Again, not meant to do too much, but just like small presentation thing that you'd see, maybe before the game or something like that to show it's your game screen. And then this is the screen for if you're playing a Royalty League team, a Royalty Conference team, I'm sorry. This, it would have a picture of one of your players, the stadium silhouette behind it, the mode name, you see the conference logo, the team logo, a small blurb about the players, and again, about the team, and then you have their team overall on the side. This is the screen I like that I made that I like the most. I like how it turned out. So with all that stuff being said, we're going to move that stuff out the way, and we're going to talk about the teams. We're going to talk about the teams now. The Royalty League has 12 teams, starting the JV conference. The JV conference, as we said, newer opponents to, group of 5 opponents, newer opponents to FBS. Very, easy skill level, as this is supposed to progress in difficulty. Again, not a whole lot. Their team, as you see the logo coming up, the Speedsters. The Speedsters, well, they're just really fast. Not going to do too much. They're really kind of just fast. Their playbook, they kind of run a lot of they'd run a lot of motion plays, auto motions. They'd run hurry up offense, really fast, do everything they can with speed, precision, but still really good. Again, not too hard, but they'd be a pretty challenging team. Their jerseys real simple. They just have the wings on the helmet. Their colors would be blue and gray, as you see here. I try to use the colors from the conference logos. You see simple picture of their jersey. And again, they'd be a 99 overall team. Their stadium, I know this is the Cincinnati base of their stadium, but their stadium would kind of just be like a track. I mean, I don't really know how to put it, but their stadium would have a track around it. Just, to show this is where they get better. A lot of these athletes be really fast, and their roster would have a lot of the players on their roster would be named speed puns and just fast. That's the only way I can describe this team. Fast. Again, their playing style, really fast, up tempo. And I think this is where they can kind of use certain aspects of the game to their advantage. Things like wear and tear. Maybe their players take less wear and tear. They're so fast. They'd give a significant speed boost to your players. This team, it'd be really easy to beat. I guess if I had to give a strategy for you to beat them, you kind of just have to slow the game down. You'd have to win the time of possession game. If I had to give a strategy, I guess for how to beat this team, just win the time of possession war. Not too much. As kind of a break before we get into the next team, I'm going to talk about the rosters from the older games. You see, it may not be the best quality, but you see these names of the players. They're very much so meant to mimic real life things and kind of references to the team. So the Glaciers, they have a player named Polar Bear, but since no person would ever be named Polar, they named him Paul, and they gave him the middle name R. So the Speedsters, I don't know. You'd have somebody named Wally West is you could have somebody named Wally West is an homage to the Flash. You could do you have these things to where the names of the players would just pay homage and just be jokes and puns, because that's how they were in the old games. So I just think that would be really interesting. I'm just kind of showing you in the background the different team and player names, but yeah, not a whole lot. My favorite of these is probably the dummies. Their players are just named Dummy. It's really funny. So they're all in the dummies, and their name is just a dummy. It's just Dummy. Really interesting. I don't know why I find that funny. I just do. The underdog conference. Very simple conference. They're a step up from JV, so they're slightly harder, but not a super significant difference. You'd kind of, as I stated, you'd play teams that are really like underrated group of 5 programs, not necessarily the bottom barrel. They're not like the most known G5 programs. They're not like your Boise States, but they're certainly no, Delaware, where, they're just now entering the FBS ranks. You definitely may have heard of these programs. Think of like a MAC. Think of like Northern Illinois. They're a really known like MAC program, but they're not like the most well-known group of 5 program. Their conference champion, the underdog champion, would be the Mice. So their players, unlike the Dummies and the Tridents, would be really tall. Or not really tall. They'd be really short. They'd be small. They'd be harder to tackle, and they'd get a little bit of speed boost. But I mean, they can be tackled with like easier, but they are hard. They're harder to tackle. Like when you finally get around to tackling them, they're easier to tackle, but they're kind of hard to tackle as they're like really elusive. You see the gameplay here. Not too much to say about them. I kind of threw them together really quick. Their jerseys would look like cheese though. They'd play in a cheese stadium. Besides that, they'd be a real run-heavy offense. Not necessarily an option, but run-heavy offense. Next, I'd like to talk about the stadiums. The stadiums kind of help set you in the atmosphere, and you see that. You're kind of going to see that with a lot of these in the way they're designed. The stadiums make a lot of the experience when you're playing these teams. So, for instance, the Mice, I put them in a cheese stadium. Like their stadium would literally be made of cheese. The best way I can describe this to you is if you've ever played Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or Mario Kart 8, you know the track, and you've played the track Cheeseland. The track Cheeseland is the best description I can give to you for what they might look like. So, for instance, the speedsters, they'd play kind of in like an old Grecian old Grecian type of like style track, because like the speedsters, and that comes from like the Olympics and like that type of vibe. And we'll talk more about the stadiums as we go along, and I'll mention those more as we talk about the different teams. The Red and Blue League, our third team in the third league. This is where you hit the middle of the road. You're playing, really middle of the road programs. But the one constant about this league is that I just find really interesting is that they all wear the colors red or blue. So like you'd be playing Liberty, Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, and that's the thing. They wouldn't have to have red and blue. They just have to have red or blue. I know the league is red and blue, but they'd have to have red or blue in their color scheme. So that way you kind of get a mixed bag of opponents. So like if you're playing a team with like red, you get like, I don't know, you could play someone really obscure. Anyway, their champ is the Sand Raiders. The Sand Raiders can make us really interesting. They could kind of sand tunnel. So they're not invisible like the Glaciers, but if you played Fortnite back in Chapter 2, Season 5, they had this sand tunneling mechanic where you could go underground in the specific sand area of the map, and yeah, you could move around. So that would be their gimmick. That's like their entire gimmick. You'd see like a little bump on like the field, so like that's where they are. That's who they are. It's like where the ball carrier is. Their stadium would be like built out of sand. It'd be like sandstone and everything, kind of like pyramids in like the desert. The best way I could describe their offense, I don't really know. That would be up to EA to decide. I wouldn't really be the best person to describe their offense, because I just don't know how I would really describe their offense. Our next little like in between segment is the gimmicks. As I talked about with the Sand Raiders, their gimmick would kind of be like tunneling underground, and with the mice, how they'd be smaller, which would make them harder to tackle. But once you do get them, they're very easy to take down and put them to the ground. And again, with the speedsters, they'd just be really fast. So be on the lookout for that as we progress through. This gameplay in the background to kind of show off the older gimmicks of the older teams from the older mode. But I think these really help make the mode. And I think this is a bit of a side thing, but I think this is where an online version of the mode would really stand out, because EA could have an online challenge of the week where you have to play against a different team weekly with a different gimmick each week. And maybe, maybe the top 5 or 10 people who beat this team, maybe they put the most points up on them, they win like an ultimate team prize or something. I don't know. But so I think that'd be something really interesting to help make the mode and give it like the online version something to pop with the gimmicks and things. The Gem Conference, again, as stated earlier, you're playing against teams that are gem programs, so they're kind of underrated, but they're also overall good programs. So you're playing against your Louisvilles, your West Virginias, your Boise States. It'd be a mix of Group of 5 and Power 5. So, you're playing teams who certainly aren't bad in the Group of 5 ranks. They're historically Group of 5, like 5 power programs, but they're, and for the FPS programs, they're not power programs, but for like the Power 4 programs, they're not, the major players, but they hold their own. The Gem Conference champion only right to make them the minors. They're kind of just like, they wear all black uniforms, and their stadium would be in like a mine. Well, not like all black uniforms. Their uniforms would represent like a minefield, kind of like the Coal Rush uniforms that West Virginia just came out with for 2024. That's kind of like how they'd look. And their stadium would be a mine shaft, so their whole gimmick is that they like, I wouldn't say blend in, but it may be, the light levels would be harder to see. So they'd definitely be, again, grinded out, run the ball team, but they can still very much so air it out. They're kind of like I would say an option style team, but grind it out with, short passes, not necessarily long throws. And yeah, I mean, like, that's it. If I had to give them a location, it'd probably be West Virginia, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot. But yeah, it's kind of the Miners. They're a real simple squad, not a whole lot going for them, but they are still there, here, and important, so that's what we got. The Creator Conference, one of two teams that did not make a game, because this one particularly, because I wanted their team to kind of be like, as I stated earlier, you'd play like a mix of YouTuber teams. You'd play like, just for example, you'd play against Bordeaux's Grand Rapids. You'd play against Not the Experts, UGF Pandas. You'd play against teams created by YouTubers, very like successful and popular YouTubers. And then you'd play against like a development team made by EA, because why not? Maybe one of the developers, Bruce and his friends, messed around and created this team. So that's kind of it with the structure. Their team would be called the Gamers, and their premise is real simple. It's an all-star team, so you play against all of the best players. So each YouTuber who's done like a team builder dynasty, they take, they would, all like the really popular ones, EA would send out a survey saying, hey, from your specific dynasty series, so from Series X, this is the only gameplay clip I have for them, sorry, but for Series X, who's your favorite player, your favorite players, they'd send it in, and they'd compile that data, take the YouTuber's data, and send in the all-star team. This is the big bad of them all, the Royalty Conference. This is where you have all of the overpowered teams and all of the real ballsy and just all the best of the best. This is where you play them. This is the final gauntlet after you've beaten everything. You've upgraded your players. You've earned all the unlocks. Everything that comes with, beating the mode. This is the league you have to play. And this is going to be a really tough gauntlet of teams. I would like to say that this group of teams were really fun to make. Just come up with like some ideas for them and different things like that. So, with that being said, let's get into the teams of the Royalty Conference. Up first, we have the Legends. Now, the Legends, a really interesting concept for a team. To these guys, if I had to give them like a little blurb, these guys are a group of kids and their friends who, they had a science project, and they built a time. And one of the friends was real smart. They all like football. They built a time machine. They went to the past, and they started balling out. They learned ball from guys like Walter Camp, all the OGs. So they're playing football as if it's like the early 1900s, like 1920 for real. They came back, and they kind of wanted vengeance. I'd like to point out, this is the only team that would have two. Every other team would have one single uniform. This team would have two uniforms, a home and away. It's because, more traditional look. It's real football. That's how it's, played. You see the away jersey here. And they'd all, wear like the leather helmets and stuff like that. They're also the team featured in our lovely graphic shown on the screen that we showed earlier. They'd kind of play in like a small, stadium, You have nothing too slight, kind of like a high school venue. They have stands on two sides. Small concession area, like a regular stadium. The next team is the trophies. Now, the trophies, this team is really, really interesting. The trophies, well, they're kind of just that. They're trophies. They're players who, they have bodies like trophies. Their whole gimmick is that, like, they're bigger. You can't really, they're really strong. You can't really, like, get through them. Trophies' main gimmick is that they have 3 different uniforms. If you're on offense, they wear gold uniforms, gold trophy. On defense, they wear like silver, and on like special teams, they usually wear like white or like platinum for their trophy. Again, they're kind of just like really strong and buff and hard to get through. Not too much, not a whole lot. Their offense would be very like aired out. They want to express to you why they're the best. So very much so they flex on you. They run a lot of trick plays too, and they're not a lot of trick plays, but they mix it up with a trick play a time or two. Also, just mention this here since I forgot to mention it. For the Legends, but the Legends force you to play football as if it's 1920. So we play like 1920 rules. That's like, but I forgot to mention, pretty crucial part of the team. But yeah, I forgot to mention it. Besides that, yeah. Next team we have is the Zebras. The Zebras are a team based off of like refs, so they're like referees who are coming back to get their revenge on the players. Their stadium would be like out in Safari. I forgot to mention for the trophies, but their stadium would be like a trophy case. The Zebras, their end zone would be like zebra stripes. Their field would be like zebra stripes. And their whole team concept is that they're just referees who want revenge. Yeah, so they know the rules. They know how to take advantage of things because, well, they're referees. So yeah, they know the rules. They understand everything pretty well. They'd run a lot of like odd plays, and like their playbook and their play style would show they know the rules. The Magicians, the tricksters of the group, don't really know how to explain them other than that. They're the tricksters of the group. They're the one team I would say that you wouldn't want to play, but you really wouldn't want to play them. Again, their uniform would kind of look like a magician's outfit. That's like their uniform I made in game. And yeah, they'd kind of like, so their whole gimmick, I guess you could say, would be like the deceivers could shrink the goalposts, but the magicians, since they know magic and stuff, the field would look smaller. Like when they have the ball, the field would be shorter, but when you have the ball, the field would be longer. The next team we have is the mascots. Real simple, just a way to get like a bunch of different college mascots in the mode. Because why not? Who wouldn't want to just play as a bunch of college mascots? I think that'd be really cool. So like, why not? Also, the positions you see here, they're kind of just like what I think. So like, the quarterback would be the Mountaineer because like he uses a rifle. But like the positions are all like real subjective. So like, I know it's kind of harder to see this one, but like these positions would all just be really subjective and like how you feel as a player, like a user. So yeah, that's really it for the mascot team. Lastly, we have the two teams I didn't make. I really didn't feel like making these, so I'm kind of just gonna show the logo for one team as just as I talk about both of them. And that team is the Bats, the first team. They'd be the first team you play in the league. These teams I mentioned, you wouldn't play them in the order I mentioned them. I kind of just went through them. The Bats would be real simple. They'd play in like a dark cave. Their jerseys would look like bats. And really, like, they could use like echolocation, so like they'd have higher awareness. The players have higher awareness. It's like on defense, their players would break to the ball much faster. On offense, they see plays much better. Like, they're playing as if they'd be like kind of like if they're NFL players against a college team, I guess. So it's kind of unfair, but like they're more experienced. They know more about the game. That's the best way I would be able to describe this team. And the final team, which I think is worth going in detail over, the Goats. They play on like a rocky terrain. So like their stadium would be up on a mountain. They'd look like their jerseys would make them look like goats, and they'd know, this team would just be like the best, very hard to beat. Yeah, they'd just be like the best in history. That's really all I can say. Yeah, the GOATs. That'd be the final team you play, and once you beat them, you unlock all the teams. You unlock everything. No, you don't really get too much for it. The teams would be the same in the online mode as the offline mode, so not too much difference with that. So that's my concept for how to bring back the fantasy challenge mode from PlayStation Madden's 08 through 12 into College Football 26 and beyond. If you watch this video, please go on to share it with your friends, spread the word so more people know about it, and they can push this video out. So maybe somebody at EA sees this and they decide to put this in the game. But with that being said, hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, comment, share your ideas in the comments. It's always good to see what other people would like to see in the game. With that, I'm out. Have a great day.